Hello, hello, everyone. It is Kenyon here. I am joined, as always, by the two gentlemen that are here on the screen that you see. So that is Beyond the Locker Room as well as Coach Roache. Coach, looks like you are back in your normal stomping grounds. I won't say home stomping grounds, but first and foremost, did you leave and things were okay?
Things are much better there now, that's for sure. But when I was flying in, I saw smoke from the eastern part of Ontario coming to Toronto. So
Yeah,
I brought the smoke with me.
yeah, exactly. Almost like Gigi. No, just kidding. Anyways,
Oh, it's a good
sorry.
one. It's a good one.
How are you doing, Beyond?
I'm good, man. It's good to see Coach Roach back in Roach stately manner. It's good to see you back there. Appreciate it. Safe and sound, and I'm glad to hear things are going much better. Not just here, but it seems like even Ontario, it's still rough, but it's much better than it was a week ago here. So let's put it that way. I mean, where you can smell firewood literally out the moment you walked out your house, which that's not a good sign when there's no firewood around. You're smelling it. So, to all the firefighters and all the emergency responders, thank you once again. Appreciate all your work and service. So yeah, and hopefully, we can find ways to kind of get some of this under control because hopefully this is not a pattern we can start seeing each summer, which we know would be devastating.
Mm.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but we are here to talk some hoops, I guess, right
We are
now.
here to talk some hoops. And at the top of the hour, I don't actually think this is going to be an hour, but at the top of the hour, we're going to be talking about a certain Darko because guess what? Since the last time we talked, we actually have a coach. Like, we actually have a coach. The Raptors actually did it. At some points, I thought that I was going to. Be at the next stage of my career before this happened, and lo and behold, they beat me to it. So there you go.
I
Um,
thought we might have a mayor before in this case before we had a head coach. I put that poll up there, man. It was going 50-50 for a while there.
Yeah, exactly. I actually saw a couple other people post about that too. They're like, yeah. So, with that being said, Darko is not the mayor, but he is the mayor of the Toronto Raptors, as in he is the head coach. So let's get right into it. The man of the hour, as you said, the we're not talking about Jermaine first or Tito. We're talking about Michael.
Start the show right
We're talking about Bay. So. Uh, in terms of his philosophy versus the man that just left, because I know that some people still want to talk about the man who just left. What are your thoughts based on what you saw in the first press conference and also having some time to really kind of dive in? And I guess we can also do a little bit of a, you know, uh, kind of an introduction, if you will, into who he is. So he is Serbian born. I believe he is the second ever European born head coach in the NBA, if I'm not mistaken. He's been coaching since he was 16 years old, which is quite a lot of experience. And I won't go through all of his experience, but he's been around the NBA. He's definitely made contacts in the NBA circle, as we see with how swift we are getting assistance as well. But I think the key thing is that I noticed several things about him. Number one, his all of his players right away compared to other players, all of them basically wished him good luck, best of luck right away. That to me is huge. You could say whatever you want about the potential, call it um, discipline on the Memphis Grizzlies in different aspects, whether it be off the court or especially on the court with Dylan Brooks, for example, and his shot selection at times. But it was a vibes team. And it's clear to me that he, especially listening to him talk, that he is someone that really cares about his players. So I'll kind of use that as an entry, and I'll let you guys. I don't know who wants to go first, but what did you think about what you have learned about him? And yeah.
Before beyond.
Well, as you said before, we finally come to this moment. We actually have a head coach. I really was questioning if this would happen before the draft or not. It was really starting to look touch and go, but I'm happy to see that we do have one. I like, he's 44 years old. Just to kind of give context when you talk about how long he's been coaching for. So to consider that he's 16, he's only still 44. He's a young man. I think also too, worked for 3-4 years at OKC. Had a year in this case with and it's a key year And this year for Phoenix, that's the year of the bubble. And that's where you started seeing things start to turn around for Phoenix. So just to give it with the other young players. So keep that in mind as well. And then, of course, the last few years at Memphis.
Do you
And
mind if I just interrupt you for 1 second?
go ahead.
I think Mikal Bridges' true shooting percentage, I saw that it ticked up to 55% that year. And apparently he had worked a lot with it. And I don't have it up on my screen right now, but there is a track record of, there seems to at least be, we won't say causation, because, correlation doesn't equal causation, but there is a correlation between him working on a staff and improvements in shooting.
Exactly. And that's good to see. So you definitely can see the focal point. One of the key things is player development with him. And I think from the player, there's some other aspects too. I'll leave that the coach in this case he wants to touch on it, but the player development side is definitely something that I think Bobby and Masai wanted to focus on. And considering the type of team we have and how important certain players coming to this next campaign are going to be when it comes to development, I think, everyone's going to focus on Scotty. It's obvious in this case, everyone's going to focus on Scotty, but I think the guy in this case, I think that might be rewarded most by this coach might be Christian Koloko. I mentioned it, on another podcast, but I'll also mention it here. I'm not saying he's going to be Triple J in this case here, but there's a lot of similarities of how Triple J came in to the league and Koloko as far as where their strengths were in this case here from a defensive standpoint. Both of them still were very obviously quite raw offensively. I think obviously Triple J had more offense in his game than Koloko, but I think Koloko's got more than people think. I watched him in college, and I think one of the things I think that he'll be more empowered with this coach to actually get opportunities to be a little more of an offensive force in certain offensive sets. So from that standpoint, I think he, in my mind, is the guy I'm really watching for this campaign when it comes to how he progresses. Obviously there's other possibilities. In this case here, we'll see what some of the guys that were left back. I think Banton was at the press conference. That was interesting. So we'll see how it's strange. When the season ended, we didn't realize how much Banton became an inflection point. But he's going to definitely be someone I'll be watching for as well too. This campaign as well too.
Yeah, I think Banton, Wieskamp actually was there. Doughton, Koloko, basically most of the young guys. I don't believe Scotty was there, which is fine. I'm not trying to, people don't think I'm trying to call one person out or another. I think, most of the vets I don't think were in attendance. But it was interesting to see that a lot of the younger guys, especially guys, which makes sense, guys that their contract status may outside of Koloko, of course, may not be may be in question, that they are showing up. I believe Ron Harper Jr. might have been there, but don't
He
quote
was
me
there
on that.
too.
He was
He
there
was
too.
there.
So yeah. Okay, Coach, you were gonna say.
He was an interesting hire, and I think at this time he probably is the right hire. It looks like he is the bridge between if they want to retool or rebuild, which I don't think will happen, or if they want to compete. I think he can do either or. And everywhere that he's been as an assistant in the NBA, guys have gotten better, and he's been on really good teams. I mean, I'm looking at Oklahoma City. He was there for about 5 years. So Kevin Durant, Russ, Oladipo, Steven Adams, James Harden. The list goes on and on where he has been. Like he's been with good players. So he knows their habits. He's helped out their skill development in some capacity. And then, like you guys said in Phoenix, Mikal Bridges, Devin Booker, I think DeAndre Ayton possibly for a year or so. And then he moves to Memphis. We got John Morant, more specifically Desmond Bain, Jaren Jackson Jr., Sandy Aldama. I think I'm saying his last name right. We've seen his progression this year. Wherever this guy's gone, players have developed. And that is something the last few years that we have not had very much of. Um, Kind of like what Beyond said earlier with Christian Koloko and what he might be able to do with him. And I'm not trying to put the Triple J comparison because I don't see that. I don't. It's not fair to Koloko, but maybe there's something there where you could really make him a big time defensive, protect the rim center, which we already saw that talent before. But what else can we get out of him too? That's what I'm kind of looking for. So I think I think this was a good hire. Um, he has a similar path to the NBA as Nick Nurse. Oddly enough, they're both really had to start from the ground up. Nick Nurse was in the British Basketball League. I think Rajakovic was in Spain. I know in Serbia beforehand, and they both were in the G League, and they were both assistants. So they've certainly paid their dues. Specifically, Rajakovic, as this is his first coaching job, and like Beyond said, he's 44 years old. My worry with Scariolo was not the basketball knowledge at all, not the X's and O's, not him as a coach. My worry is kind of the not so much the age, but the relationships with players. Look where Rajakovic has been. He's got relationships with players. And that's what it's about really in the NBA. Get a coach who has relationships with players and other coaches. Now we know they're building out their staff. I know we'll go into that a bit more later, but I think this has been a I think this is a good hire for player development and just a culture reset that we need.
Yeah, I think those are all really good points. The thing that I'm very curious to see is kind of that contract. I think you were mentioning it. We've also talked about this, away from this space as well. But I'm really curious because I always saw this kind of as a compromise. I think for the front office, for a long time there, you thought that they were going to lean towards Sergio, and I think that I'll be very curious to see what the cost of this coach is because I think that will tell you a lot relative to other hires because I don't see him getting, you know, the reported $12 million that Monty got or the reported $14 million extension that Pop might get actually, which, shout out to Pop. So I just don't know if I see that necessarily happening at all. So, um, yeah, I think that the other thing sorry, I think that the other thing that I am seeing a little bit here is they are moving very swiftly on um, assistance, shall I say. And to me, that I find very interesting because they took so long for this search that all of a sudden they just, within a couple days, they're starting to like now move on assistants. That is very, very interesting for sure. In terms of the assistants, right now, what we know is there have been two assistants that have been announced. So that would be Jama is coming back. He grew up watching the Raptors. Just a little bit about Jama really quickly. And we'll go back and cover kind of everyone in total. So he grew up watching the Raptors. He actually moved here from, I believe it's Swaziland, which is in Africa, when he was 5 years old. He not only did that, but he started his coaching working for Vince Carter's summer camps back in the day. So that was actually a very interesting thing. Then he started volunteering for the Raptors, making and mixing like Gatorade back in the day. This guy has really, really always wanted to be part of the Raptors circuit, so to speak, and he really has been. And Sam Mitchell took him under his wing, and kind of brought him into the team side. And then of course, Masai brought him back once, and then it's almost like the Godfather. See, every time I try to get out, they pull me back in. So he's back again. He's back again, and I think everyone is very, very happy to see one of our own back. He even went to a Canadian university, studied kinesiology. I think they won the Canada West title because he played at UBC during his time. So he's really done the circuit. And one of the things that I wrote about him when I was making notes is that he feels like the coaching staff should always like his philosophy is he feels like coaching staff should always remain organized on behalf of the players, similar to Darko, where Darko kind of mentioned how the coaches are there to kind of serve players in a way and kind of utilize the resources that the players are there to give them and really put that into meaningful things. So it's kind of a different philosophy than Nurse. I think Nurse was very much X's and O's. Not saying that these guys aren't, but these guys really seem to be focusing on that the people side of things, the people management, the ego management side of things, which is very, very underrated
You've been
part of the coaching job.
you've been very kind in this case here, but
I try.
let's get brass tacks on this, okay? When it's all said and done, we've all heard the stories come out. We've
Mm,
all heard them come out. Everyone's written them all in there, from the Star, the Globe and Mail, the Sun. When it's all said and done, Nick Nurse did not seem to have a lot of friends in that organization. When it was all said and done,
no,
and he
he did
didn't
not.
seem to be very much of a people person. You said before, and did not build on many relationships. We don't even have to even go into the stories we heard from there. We can see with our own two eyes. All right, we know the relationship he had with a star player was contentious, to be kind, at
Yeah,
times.
it's
All right,
funny because people still seem to think that Nurse and Pascal and Fred are all a trio, and it's like, do you guys not remember the
yes,
fight that him and Pascal had? And then after that, like whatever happened, and he didn't say much about Pascal. He didn't say anything good, didn't say anything bad,
yep.
didn't
And
mention his name.
nope. And I think the other way went the other way. Now, as you said before, just flipping the other way when Darko left in this case, how many players say, "Hey, good luck, coach"?
Every
When
single
Dirk went
one.
out the door, it was very revealing that not a one player, from the 17th dude up to the star player, had anything to say about Nurse when he left.
Only one dude,
Only one dude, and I ain't gonna go much
Fred.
into that one dude. Yes, he said it, not me, folks, but there's only
I'll
one
take the
dude.
blame.
Yeah, that's it. So that's not surprising in this case here. But everybody else, it doesn't matter where they came from, or what type of philosophy they had, or what position they played, they were all like, nice knowing you, adios.
Yeah.
And it says a lot.
Same in the press conference. No one, the only person who gave him a pseudo vote of confidence was Fred. That's
Yeah,
it.
says a
Everyone
lot.
else was like, Pascal was like, it's above my pay grade.
As I said before, when we had the discussion when Nurse left, I said up to a day like today, Coach Casey comes in here, and they still refer to him as coach.
Yeah.
The ex players that play under him, they have much respect for him. Even the guys that left in this case, when they bump into him there and they're going up against him, and it says a lot in this case to me how that played out and how the players kind of just didn't have anything really to say about it. You know, even when he got the new job, only the same guy before is the only one to say, "Hey, congrats, coach," you know, on your new
Yeah.
job.
No one else said nothing. It was
Nothing.
just like, and the thing is that Darko's already said thank you to the city too. I'm not saying it's the most important thing, but
But
it's
it
just
says a lot.
like the fact that he's already wrote that post. I don't care if he put it into Chat GPT, right? But like he wrote a post already to thank Memphis and stuff like
But
that.
right, but
Nick
I
Nurse waited till he got hired.
right, and that's a very I'm glad you brought that point up because this speaks to what we discussed before in this case. Because as you mentioned, they were looking for someone in this case that puts the players first, the players' well-being first, the
Yep.
get the best of the players first. It's not about me first. And I think a lot of times in this case here, sadly, the previous coach, there's a lot of me about what's about me in this case here. And it's really revealing that he didn't say anything about it when he left Toronto. Not goodbye, nothing in the Players Tribune, not a little something out in one of the major papers, nothing. There's a
Yep.
man won a championship for the first time in this city, for this country.
Yep.
He can't say a word out of the door. To put it in contrast, the guy that he took the job from, Dwayne Casey, literally put something out. You know, really, when you read the article, man, you could feel Toronto when you talk about going down the subway, the TTC, and what stations you get and stuff like that. And he will miss the people to the super fan and stuff like that, everything like that, and then stuff like that. And he left. At that time, he didn't know he was getting a job in Detroit. And he
Yep.
said, "Hey, it was like a day or two
He
later."
didn't. He didn't wait till he got a job to say
Right.
thanks.
It's the ego in this case, and the frailty, the ego in this case. That he's like, I don't want anyone, see me while I'm looking down now. So now I'm on top. Now I'm now coaching Philadelphia. Now I say, oh, thank you, Toronto. It's very revealing. And
The
that's
other, yeah, and the other thing is that Darko in his presser, he was asked a question from Samson Folk, who graciously asked one of the only basketball questions that we saw. Thank you, Samson. Shout out to Samson. Um, I think it was interesting that he. We'll get into his answer in a second. I'll put it on screen around now, but the key thing is that he answered the question succinctly. He almost answered too much to the point where he's like, I can draw out schemes with you
I thought
later.
someone was holding back for a second.
I feel like the Raptors PR set was like,
guys like Sam like, please speak.
yeah, keep going. I want to hear more. So I re-listened to it just to make sure that we got all 3 points. But like you said, he said it in 3 points. Like, I want this, this, and this. He used I don't know what kind of technique that was, but it was very easy to follow.
One-on-one, that's classic one-on-one communication, man. 3 key points, boom, 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 and everyone can remember what you're doing. And I think that was very revealing in the press conference too. He's very forward, very straightforward. Even the posture, comparing him in this case to previously, is almost a polar opposite. So I think from that standpoint, to be fair, when he's got a 4-game losing streak, we'll see what it looks like.
Yes.
Depending on what direction they go, he might have a few.
You might have a few.
Yes.
He might have a few.
This is true.
Right.
I mean, we may not have a pick this year, so but with that being said, the 3 points that he talked about, which I think is important, so we'll because it's the Raptors, because we have a lot of length on this team, we'll talk about the defense first, then we'll talk about the offense. So Samson asked him about his defensive philosophy, and his 3 points were, and it was in this order. He said everything starts with protecting the paint.
For me, everything defensively starts with protecting the paint.
Which, if you watch this year's NBA, finals, and just the lead up into the finals, you saw anytime that there were guards that were able to get rim penetration, it changed the series a lot of the time. So that's the first thing. I think the second thing is this is going to be like the I guess the last 2 things are the reverse of Nick Nurse, and we were actually talking about this before. Is number 1, it's after that you focus on corner threes, so focus on taking away corner threes.
And after that, we're going to take away corner threes, and we're going to have late contested wing threes. We can get in X and O's, and I can draw you our schemes when we get a chance. I would love to do that, but I'm really looking forward to talk with our guys as well and see their comfort level with all of these things. All decisions that I'm going to be making, I'm going to consult with players and people in the organization, with my coaching staff. So don't worry, we're going to have really good defense.
And then finally, late contests on the wings. So we were talking about that earlier, and I Beyond pointed out, is like that makes a lot more sense because, again, you have a longer 3-point line, right at the elbows before you get into the corner shots. So let the geometry, to take your words, let the geometry do the work for you. Why are you making yourself do extra work? And why are you tiring your guys out and grinding their knees in the dust if you don't have to?
Mm-hmm.
Any thoughts on that?
Coach, you're the coach, man.
Well, like you said, let the geometry do the work. But I just look at, if the goal is to protect the paint, you need the personnel to do so. Even it's going to be the same for him on offense too. So when I'm looking at protecting the paint, well, who do we have protecting the paint right at the back? We're going to have Pirtle and Koloko. I'm pretty satisfied with those 2 in the back. So we should be fine there. And I'm sure protecting the paint too will be, a lot of guys, depending on where the ball is on the court, everybody probably have at least a foot in the key, unless you're guarding someone who has the ball. That I'm just taking a guess. It might be something like that, which is fine. You have to stop dribble penetration, and protecting the corner threes. What a concept, eh?
I know it's
something we didn't see last year.
I never would have thought.
I mean, it's technically the shortest 3-point shot on the court is the corner 3.
You wonder why? I think I saw it somewhere, but maybe it's the easiest 3-pointer in basketball. Sorry,
it probably is because it's the shortest too, right? And
it is, yeah.
So
sorry.
I think already those defensive concepts, I think it's going to help. But I think the main thing that I'm looking for is how much effort are they going to expend on defense? We saw it last year. This team defensively last year expended so much effort. It kind of cost them on offense. You can't do that anymore. Really, you can't throw double teams at the top of the three. You can't throw double teams at the elbow of the three, like foul line extended to the three. Nobody does that. So we have to. I hope that they're not going to try to double team and rotate to a point of exhaustion this year as well. I just hope that the defensive philosophies like have his 3 points that he mentioned, but also let's be smart about this as well. Let's not destroy ourselves on defense. Let's try to conserve our energy too for what the offensive philosophy is going to be. And I expect that to be more prettier to watch this year than what we saw last year. It was pretty ugly to watch last year.
I just want to
Definitely.
jump on this point about the length because he made comments about using the length, right? And I think the use of length, sometimes everyone thinks in this case, there's two ways you could think about using length. One is the way in this case, how, Nick Nurse and me, others, especially a lot of college coaches think of it is we get out and we lengthen the floor in this case, we stretch you out and we're playing you way up high in this case here and using our length to make it hard for you to make passes in this case here. That's one way to look at it. There's another way you could use length as well too, which I think this might be the philosophy in this case. Darko's philosophy is I'm going to force you into the paint where my length is going to show up to make you take tougher shots. So I'm taking for a guy, for example, a guy at Siakam who has been pretty much used on the perimeter defensively under the Nick Nurse system. In this case here, and to Coach's point, you end up paying the price in this case later on in games because the legs are getting worn out. It's like tire threads. It starts getting less and less. If he's playing using that 6'9" length now and that 7 foot something wingspan at when a guy's trying to shoot a 10-foot jump shot, where his strength of his length and his timing for blocking shots, which has almost been something that's been lost in Siakam's defensive game. He's actually quite a good shot blocker, but he's never put in positions to block shots because he's out there chasing around guards in this case all the time. So if you have guys forced in there to force him into a Pirtle or Koloko or the Siakam from the perimeter, all of a sudden now you can use their strengths in those ways and still use length in that way to get what you want done in this case here, and potentially in this case conserve more energy that way.
Well, I mean, the way that I describe, if I were to use one word to describe that last year's defensive philosophy, it was exacting. It was just so demanding on their every sort of athletic resource that they had in their bodies. Another thing is that I noticed that one issue that I've always had with Scotty since Summer League, and I'm wondering if it was a Nick Nurse philosophy or not, was I used to find he used to hedge up a little bit too high on guards. And I'm like, just let the length do the work for you, dude. Right? And anytime he did that, he was so much better. And I think part of it was he's just better as a roamer off ball. That took a while to figure out for the coaching staff. But I would like to see Barnes again, not necessarily be a point of attack defender, because I think we found out that that's not necessarily his best role. But I think you could really see Barnes turn into a much better and much more efficient, because he has the tools and he's shown flashes, especially later on in seasons, of being a very good defensive player. I'm really curious to see what Darko does from a defensive standpoint. As we switch over to the offensive standpoint, there's the talk of the 0.5 seconds, which a little bit different than sometimes the pace that we've seen play on our offensive system, particularly when certain shorter point guards are running.
It's interesting you mentioned it. That's going to be a very interesting discussion in a couple of weeks. Yeah,
it will be very, very much, because and for just so people know, last time, it's been a while since I looked, but I think the biggest thing for Fred, in terms of like debating whether or not him with the ball, look at the pace. If you look at the pace, because there are pace numbers, and you can look at the pace numbers with him on and off the court and stuff like that. I believe the pace was at least between 5 to 10 points faster with him off the court. It was below 100 pace, and it was above 100 pace. I know that for sure.
Well, just to interject for a second, you gave us a screenshot sometime near the end of the season of the best lineups for the Raptors.
Yes. Yeah.
Most of the best lineups for the Raptors did not have him in the lineup.
It had Siakam, it had Koloko, it had Scotty, it had GTJ,
Yep.
And OG.
and it did have
OG.
OG.
And
So
some of them had
there's
some
no one else left.
combination that they put, but-
And
Right.
even with Pirtle here, it was still not with. But that specific lineup that we just called, even without Pirtle, that was the best lineup. And what was interesting is that near to the end of the season, Coloco played more and more and closer to crunch time, which I liked. But I won't get into the Coloco today. So yeah, I think if we keep everyone, you expect there to be an uptick in terms of efficiency, but I think the more important thing is that it'll probably be a much more pleasant experience, as Coach was suggesting, because sometimes, like watching basketball or even playing, for those of you who do play, like when the ball moves around, it's a lot more fun to play with people. even if and I remember I want to say I remember when it was first brought up by D'Antoni on The Ringer with Bill Simmons, I believe. This is a couple years ago. And he said, "Well, why did you give it to Harden like that?" He said, "Well, that's what the analytics was telling us." And he's not wrong, is that if you looked at the analytics, Harden going ISO is part of the reason why the league is going ISO. ISO is, with the right players, the most efficient play in basketball from a points per possession standpoint. But it's not fun to play. And I think Darko's even talked about this, where he said, like, players don't like to play like that. I think he was talking to Will Lou. So sorry if I'm getting, he did a bunch of media tour things that day and didn't, I may be mixing up who asked what question, but yeah. So thoughts on his offensive philosophy thus far, and yeah.
Okay, I'll jump in on this one. I'll start on this one for offense. I think honestly, this is where the Fred discussion starts to really kind of, where the rubber meets the road, because he wants to move the ball. He wants to get up the court quickly. You have a guard in this case that's played most of his career controlling things and setting things up and putting people in spots to kind of either get his shot off or to get the best shot he thinks for his team in very methodical type of ways. Um, that is a disaster perhaps waiting to happen in this case here. Like, so with this idea of having Fred back, honestly, for their sake, I think, and for everyone's sake, it'd be best for Fred to move on, because considering the type of style he wants to play, I just don't think it mixes. Now, as far as the rest of the team goes, if you don't have a lot of great jump shooters in this case here, getting the ball up fast is probably a good idea in this case. So, that's a good idea. What I'm hoping that will also happen is that if you're in with half court sets, if he's got more philosophy of more movement and guys moving without the ball and getting guys going downhill, I would love to. If the first possession or first 2 minutes of the first game of the season, the preseason, and I all of a sudden see Scotty going downhill off a curl, or same with Siakam, or even OG, I would be praying to the gods and saying, "Thank you so much, Lord. Thank you." Finally, using the strengths that these guys have. They're strong young men going to the hoop. They know how to get their bodies toward the hoop and draw contact. Don't make it hard for them to have to dribble 8 times. Just get the ball in their hands and 2 dribbles and they're at the hoop. I don't know why. I hope this is what we're looking at in his offense when he's kind of talking about that. And he seems to be into very much trying to create interesting plays for them in this case. Maybe we might start seeing more misdirection, stuff of that nature. It would be nice to see some, more backdoor cuts, stuff of that nature. So I am looking forward to that part of it. And I think with the mentality he has of how he wants to work towards helping the players, I think nobody else should grow more in this case here than probably Pascal and Scotty, because I think he will give them the opportunity to let them grow offensively as playmakers and decision makers, a way probably that it just wasn't going to happen in the last regime.
Coach?
This style's going to take time for these guys to do, because they've been so accustomed to playing so much ISO basketball. When I think of the situations that Siakam was in, a lot of ISO, a lot of dribbling. Yes, certainly Fred as well. OG at times in the corner would catch the ball. He'd try to dribble, try to make something out of nothing, more or less. So this is going to be like every player is really going to have to buy into this or it won't work, right? And that includes assuming Siakam's going to be here, and kind of most of the core and stuff like that. And it's going to be more it's going to be more prettier to watch if there's lots of ball movement and lots of cutting. It's I know it's that half second possession offense, but that's also going to mean lots of cutting as well. I think he mentioned the press conference about Delano cut and stuff. He said at the press conference, and that's encouraging to hear, certainly. So this is it's going to take time. We're going to have a lot of patience moving forward,
Can I,
and
can I just propose something, Coach, as maybe as a just the challenge it only one way about how much time it may take. Will it take as much time as we think, or in this case here, many guys were willing to play that way, but the coach that was previously there did not want to play that way. And the reason why I asked that is that when Pearl came, there was a window there for a few weeks there. When you all of a sudden seen backdoor cuts with him and Siakam all of a sudden out of the blue, like, holy smokes, And Banton, what the hell get Banton? He can cut. If there's nothing else he can do, he can cut. There's other guys here. Koloko showing he could pass pretty well in this case from that position. We know what Scotty can do. I think there's guys here that would just be sitting there and take that and just be drinking that up. I think the only guy I would be concerned about to a little bit, but not too much. Probably OG wants a few more post-ups, but I think him too in this case here will adapt eventually. But I think there's a lot of guys in this team that could play that style. But I do wonder how much was it kind of like pretty much kind of pushed back, because I think in this case they wouldn't stick with it, be it the coaching staff or particular other players that didn't want to do that. And I think I do wonder how much is which one it is. That's all I'm saying, suggesting. So I guess I think it might change faster than my thing is I think it might change faster than you might think it would be.
Well, and especially if you have a coach and a point guard, specifically a point guard, since everyone wants, if they're in sync and those two players are the ones that are guiding the offense in some way, shape, or form, that's going to guide your offense. And so I think that in terms of putting guys in places, that it'll be interesting to see. So that I think kind of covers everyone. We didn't really talk about Pat. I'm just realizing
he crossed my mind when you went. They say, "Hey, what about poor Pat? Man? Go ahead, give the bio for Pat, man."
So sorry, Pat. This is what happens when you're Michelle Williams in Destiny's Child. You get the forgotten person. I'm sorry, Pat. So Pat Delany, unfortunately for what people will view him, is his most recent stop was on the Wizards under Wes Unseld Jr. Now, he also helped out with the Orlando Magic. He also was with Steve Clifford way back on the Charlotte. Well, I should say way back, 2018. Well, actually, he was with Steve Clifford for both stops, so he seems to be connected to Steve Clifford.
But I was years, right? The ones when they went to playoffs, right? Yeah.
Yes. So 2014 for Charlotte, and 2018 to 2021 for Orlando Magic. So I mean, he's been around. He was also here's the neat thing: he also was part of, for 2021, short stint, but for 2021 he worked as a scout, an advanced scout for the Miami Heat.
Mm-hmm.
That's very interesting. And so I kind of ignore the Wizards experience. I don't blame him for any of the Wizards scouting, because he clearly wasn't that. He's an assistant coach. And he's not making the draft picks, that's for sure. No offense to the Wizards, but I mean, the Wizards have some players. It's just they just haven't had anyone who's really popped like that in a while. But yeah, so that's kind of his experience. I don't know if you guys want to really add anything beyond that. I know he has a bachelor's of administration, and so, but of course, the man, the myth, the legend, as I first tweeted, I said, the Darko horse candidate arrived, and that's really what this specific show has been about. So, is there anything that you guys want to add?
I would just say I'm curious to see if they put any gray beards in here.
Yes. Yeah. I don't think. I don't think Sergio will be hopping across the pond.
No.
To me, when it was like they canceled the trip, that to me was a sign.
Yeah.
They're like, you don't need to
Yeah.
get on the plane, my man.
For the dollar amount when it's finally brought out would be interesting. I just all I got to say about that.
Yes. So, without further ado, I will just say this, just to end this specific episode of Basketball Rewind. I am at 100 subscribers officially. It came to my attention yesterday. Someone told me actually, and it was I was not really tracking it per se, and to me it was really it's been good. I started this more for fun more than anything. I know some other creators or sometimes people get competitive or whatever. I'm just doing this for fun and I'm enjoying the journey. And it's been a good journey, and I hope it continues for as long as I am able to muster up the time to be able to do it. So thank you for all of my 100 subscribers, and here's to the next 100. So it's only up and up from here. So yeah, with that being said, of course, like, comment, and if you aren't one of the 100 subscribers, subscribe. And we'll see you in the next episode. So take care. Peace.